good evening, everyone. This is Night Mike, and I'm your host, Michael Gantt. I'm so glad to have you in the stream tonight. It's going to be a great time. I've got a special guest. I'm very excited to talk to him about some of the things that are going on in his life. And before I bring him into the studio, I want to make just a couple of program notes. The first one is that is Tuesday morning, July 22nd, coming up pretty quick. My special guest on Live Mic on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. is Pastor Mark Fay of Vibrant Church up in Burlington, Vermont. This is a church where lots of exciting things are happening. They've got a great team of people that are on the college campus at UVM and on the streets of Burlington, and they're doing street ministry and leading people to Christ. Mark told me, I was up there a couple of weeks ago to preach. He said they're seeing 8, 9, 10 salvations a week. And there's an awful lot of churches that would love to see 10 salvations in a year. And so I wanted Mark to come on, talk about Vibrant Church, and share a little bit with us about what's going on. And then on July 31st, I'm going to have a familiar face. Jean Marie Davis has been in the stream with me several times, but there's some exciting things happening in Jean's life and in her work. She is the Executive Director of Branches Family Resource Center here in Brattleboro. And Jean is also the subject of a new movie that's under development right now called Breaking Shadows. Excuse me. And I wanted Jean to come and share with our listeners, our followers, a little bit about what's going on at Branches Family Resource Center now. Great developments. Things are happening so fast that our heads are spinning. We're about to go medical. We're going to be a medical clinic. Ladies can come in and get a sonogram. We're going to be able to do testing for STDs and all sorts of services that we've never been able to perform. And also, I'm going to be playing the trailer for the new movie that is, as I said, being developed. It's the Jean Marie Davis story. She was trafficked as a sex slave for more than 25 years and remarkably delivered, and she's got an amazing testimony. And so I am going to be playing the trailer from Breaking Shadows in that interview with Jean Marie Davis. That's July 31st. Now I want to welcome into the studio tonight my special guest. His name is Andrew Michael Gantt. Good evening, Andrew. Some of you may or may not know that Andrew is my son, my middle son, and Andrew lives in Savannah area down in Georgia. I happen to have taken his son captive this week and brought him home with us from Virginia. Alexander is here with us for the next week or so before Mom and Dad come north for our family camp. But Andrew is by trade a chef. He is well known in the hospitality industry, but God has been doing some amazing things in his life. And I want to talk about that a little bit and find out and let you find out some of the exciting things that's going on. Let me say, first of all, son, it was good to see you Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't even remember where it was.
It was a quick trip, but it was nice.
Yeah, it was a quick trip. You drove 9.5 hours one way. We drove 9.5 hours the other. And we had the opportunity to introduce Alexander to Diener's family restaurant in Lancaster, and you know that's one of your favorite and my favorite restaurants in the world. And now you can add one more fan because Alexander thought he had died and gone to heaven.
Danner's is pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I do have to tell you, I tried to take a picture of his plate of food to send to you, and he covered it up with his body. He would not let me send that picture to you. So I'm telling on him a little bit. So for the folks who don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit. I've already let the cat out of the bag that you're my son, you're my middle child. And of course, everybody knows that middle children have their own unique personality. And it's almost like you're an older child because tell us why.
So yeah, Hannah and I, my wife, joke about that often. Everyone has their own personality. You've got the oldest child syndrome, the middle child, the youngest. The oldest ends up being the leader. The middle child is kind of the rebel. The youngest gets what they want with no apologies. I ended up being the youngest of the first set, the oldest of the second set, and middle overall. So depending on what sibling I'm with and what situation I find myself in, I can kind of slip into any of those roles pretty quickly.
Yeah. You managed to adapt yourself pretty quickly. So yes, Andrew's our middle son. He moved his family south. Is it 3 years ago now?
We celebrated 3 years down here last week.
And you also just celebrated 20 years of marriage.
Yep. Last night, me and my wife went out for a wonderful dinner and celebrated 2 decades together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well,
your
mother and I are closing in on 6 decades together. So you got a ways to go. There's your sister Robin jumping in here. Good evening, Robin. Good to have you in the stream tonight. There's a bunch of other people in here, and they'll speak up sooner or later. So now you've got your nephew Riley down there. We traded Alexander off for Riley, and did he ever get over that street burger that he ate in Washington the other day?
You know what? We got him some good Mexican food in him. He seemed to get over it pretty quickly.
Right out, didn't it? Yeah, I saw you in jalapenos. I saw the picture. You were in jalapenos, yeah.
And actually, even before that, on the way down, we had stopped for gas and we saw a roadside stand selling peaches. And he got this wide-eyed look, so we got some peaches straight out of the orchard and munched on them the rest of the ride down. So,
well, I need to tell you that your mother and I and Alexander, we went to Chambersburg and got on Route 30 and drove overland through Gettysburg and into Lancaster. And I had a Zoom call to take, so they're being quiet and I'm on my Zoom call. And then I looked up and we were in Lancaster, and your mother said, "What are we going to do for lunch?" And I said, "I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's not going to be McDonald's."
Yeah. Oh, golly, what will we do?
Oh, let's think. Can we go somewhere? Yeah. So we went to my favorite Dutch smorgasbord in Lancaster. We had a great meal. Alexander thought it was a wonderful idea. He was completely in charge of that. But on the way, we stopped and bought some peaches, some Pennsylvania peaches, and some watermelon, and some corn. And it was. So we took the long route home, but it was good. So tell us how you ended up in Georgia, just for all those people who don't know.
Oof. So for years, I had wanted to move south. From the day me and my wife started planning our wedding, I was planning on us moving south. And it had always been the same thing. We're moving to the Carolinas. That's where my heart is, where the family's from. As you know, my heart's in the Carolinas, a little more west. I love being in the mountains in the Carolinas, and that's where we were moving to. Yeah. And I told her, we're moving. And she would always reply back with, "You're moving alone if you move."
Believe me, that's what your mother says to me when I suggest that we're moving. Write me once in a while, but I'm not moving.
And we had kind of fought over it for years. I would get fed up with New England and say we were moving, and she would say, "You're moving alone. We're not leaving family." And after the pandemic and many changes are in our lives and a couple health issues, I was in a transitional period in my job, and I came home one day and said, "I'm done. I'm sick of this area. We're moving south." And she went, "Okay, where?" "Oh, okay." I put the house on the market the next day.
Yeah, and I think sold it 2 days later.
Yeah. We had started the conversation, actually, I didn't put it on the market the next day, about how our oldest daughter was coming up on middle school. And we said, once she's done with elementary school, she was in middle school on her way to high school. We said, once she's done with middle, we'll move her. That's when we'll go. When we have to switch schools, we'll pick up and move. Right. And so, as you do, we told God our plans, and he laughed.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, me and Hannah both woke up in the middle of the night, and literally looked at each other and said, I think we're moving sooner than we think. And I kind of laughed and went, okay, well, I'll put the house on the market. I'll put the house on Facebook. I'll put a Facebook marketplace ad. No realtor. If we're really supposed to move early, God will sell the house. Our house was on the market for 12 days, and we ended up getting 40 grand over what we asked for it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good fleece.
Yeah, and I went, oh, okay, we're moving. So now that we had our house under contract, we had to figure out where we were moving.
You had to move, didn't you? Yeah.
So it was, we're going to the Carolinas, and we would look in the Carolinas, and there was no houses on the market that we were in our range. It was either a 1-bedroom trailer on an eighth of an acre of land, or it was a 5,000 square foot house for a couple $1 million. There was nothing in the middle. And so someone said, well, look further south. And we looked in South Carolina, same thing. Next thing you know, we're looking in Georgia. We think we're moving to Augusta, and we do a whirlwind trip to come look at the area, look at a couple of houses, and for me to do a couple interviews. And we were looking in Augusta. We pull into the Augusta area, and both Hannah and I look at each other, and we know as soon as we pull into the area, this was a wasted trip. It's not where God wants us to move. I mean, we just both had that feeling immediately of, this isn't right. But we saw the day out, and we looked at all the houses, because we had already wasted this realtor's time. We might as well let her show the houses. I did the job interviews. Maybe it was nerves. We weren't hearing God. And we got to the end of the day, and we went, no, we're not moving here. And my wife had made a friend that lived in Gantt, Georgia, what's right outside of Savannah. She had met us in Augusta, and we were planning on driving back to Vermont that night. She said, don't look. I live 2 hours away. Come to my house, stay the night. We'll go out to dinner. Come to church with me in the morning, and then we'll leave. Now, Hannah and I were riding in separate cars. She hopped into the car with her friend Robin, and I was driving our car. And we pull into the area, and both of us went, I think we're moving here. Okay, well, we'll kick out another fleece. We talked about it on the way home, and I said, I will apply to a couple jobs. Sure enough, I was asked to do a job interview the very next week. And I hopped back in the car and drove right back down. And I said, well, Lord, if this is the job for me and this is the area, they're going to make me an offer, and it's going to be more money than I've ever made anywhere else. I went, I did the interview, I had to do a tasting, I had packed the car back up, and I was driving home. And anyone who knows Savannah, there's a very large bridge that connects Savannah City to South Carolina over the Savannah River.
I've crossed that bridge many times.
I wasn't even across the bridge, had not even left the state yet. And I was getting a phone call from the hotel that I had just applied at, offering me more money than I had ever made anywhere else, and asking me when I could start. My choice, I get to tell them my start date. And I went, okay. And I hung up the phone and called Hannah and said, we're moving to Savannah. 2 months later, I packed up everything I owned and got in a truck and came down here. Lived down here for a month and a half by myself, and 4th of July weekend, flew back up, packed the rest of our lives and my family into a box truck that was entirely too small, but it was the biggest one we could get.
I remember that day.
And we've been here ever since. And the Lord provides, right? And he provides well. He provides well. While I was down here alone, we had made a list of 12 items that we wanted in a new house. I met a realtor who was from home. She was born and raised over in Keene.
Right.
Found her here, friend of a friend of a friend, got her call number. We connected, found out we were from the same area, hit it off right off the bat. I gave her the list. The very first house that we looked at, she said, I wasn't able to find a house with all 12, but I found a house with 11 of the 12. The one item that she couldn't find was we wanted a house with over 3 acres. And she said I could only find one with 2.5.
Oh, dear. Okay. Then.
And I went, okay. And sure enough, as soon as I walked in the house, the Lord said again, yep, this is it. Next thing you know, we are set to rent the house until we can close on it. We ended up renting the house for 48 hours before the lawyers were able to get us to sign papers on it. And we were in the house that we're in now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful house too.
Yeah,
Well,
it's great.
It's very clear. Let me just take a break for a second. I see Robin has signed in, and I see a whole bunch of people up in the corner there who are hiding in the shadows. I have no idea who they are, but join us in the chat room as soon as you can. We like to know who's in here. So now you're living in Georgia. You've got a great job in a great hotel. You're doing what you're good at. You're doing what you love to. And by the way, I've been to that hotel. It was great. And there's actually been a couple of jobs along the way, but now something's changed. What's changed?
Yeah. So I had known from a young age that I was supposed to be doing something in ministry, and I ran for it forever. My friend Jeremy, and I hope he sees this at some point, he laughs every time I say this. As a pastor's kid, you grow up in the church, and it's really hard to eat hot dogs when you know how they're made. Yep. I know how the sausage was made. I walk into a church, and I see decisions being made, and I know the wrong reasons that they're being made and why this stuff is happening. And as a teen, I mean, it left a bad taste in my mouth. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I was doing some devotion, and I was trying to think of, I knew I was supposed to be doing something in ministry, but I wasn't sure what. And a mutual friend of ours had asked me, he had told me I needed to figure out what the issue was. Because often you find your ministries in where you find the problems because you want to fix them.
Yeah.
And the Lord just kind of dropped into me that the church doesn't know what hospitality is. It doesn't know what true hospitality is. That's what it was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up as a pastor's son that had the word preached at him 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and between you or mom or Kenny or Juanita and the Cakeleys and the Parkers and the Morels, and then growing up in the professional sense, because I mean, I've worked in the industry since I was 14 years old. Right. I had small jobs that were offshoots, but I've been in the hospitality industry for a long time. I mean, I've been in the hospitality industry going on 25 years now. It gave me an interesting perspective, so I just started doing some writing and started doing study on what biblical hospitality was. And through study, I found that hospitality is really a aspect of the heart of God for us.
Right.
And started writing about it and shared it with you and a couple friends, and was resoundingly asked the question, what are you doing with this? You need to put this out. So it started as a book and then turned into a blog, then turned into a training program for churches. And now that that's all kind of settled, I'm going back toward the book and really starting to compile it so this information can get out to the church.
Well, when you contacted me, and of course, let me just say, as your dad and as a pastor, I read your stuff. I am blessed that you and the Lord have worked through your issues about ministry, okay? Because I've known since you were a child. I will tell this. Russell George is in here. Hi, Russell. I know Russell asked about you all the time, Andy. And Roger Gauthier, who follows your blog site very carefully, lives way out in the panhandle of Florida. I believe that's where Roger is now. And others are here. But I just saw Russell this morning, so he said to tell you hi. So hi.
Hi,
But
Russell.
you contacted me. You said, Dad, I'm going to write a book, and you were talking about publishing and all of those things, and we talked about that. But I remember saying to you, at, in today's market, you're probably going to have to self-publish, and which means you're going to have to develop your own platform. And I recommended that you start a blog, and you did. And I just want to say to everybody listening, and by the way, let me put it up there. Uh, this is a remarkable site. Now, I know you post on Facebook and a whole bunch of other places and everything, but this is Andrew's. Make sure that I've spelled all that right, Andrew. It's basically saltlightandhospitality.com, and you should check it out. I'm Andrew writes some amazing stuff. I I will tell you, I've said to so many people, Andrew, I always knew Andrew was bright. There's a lot goes on up here. I was absolutely taken aback. I was actually shocked by the quality of your writing. Now, it's raw sometimes. It's in your face sometimes, uh, and it's. And I don't want anybody. I don't especially want you to take this the wrong way. It's not polished writing, and if you polished it up, you would ruin it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not. It's really meant. It's very conversational. It's very in your face. Sometimes it'll hurt your feelings. Uh, and but what you landed on, Andrew, is a message that the church absolutely has to hear. Absolutely has to hear. I've thought of the number of times, and you've seen this happen, where people have moved into our community and they have gone to a church and been told in that church, you would be happier down the street at Agape,
Yep.
and which is code for we're really not comfortable with you being here, and that's happened more than times than I care to count.
Hmm.
And I was your son, by the way, got his first taste of working in our food pantry tonight.
Perfect.
His grandmother said, "Come on, you're going with me. You're going to learn about real ministry." And
Yep.
he took him in. He worked. I said, "How'd it go?" He said, "A couple of guys got under my skin a little bit." And I said, "Well, the folks who come through here can get under your skin a little bit, but the stuff, Andrew, the stuff that you're writing is absolutely amazing." Robin says it's almost like he came from a family of creative people. Um, but you don't write. Robin writes, and I write, and you write, but you don't write like I write, and you don't write like Robin writes. You have an Andrew Michael Gantt style that I don't think anybody else could pull off.
So the probably and thank you. One of the biggest compliments I got when I first started writing was when I first sent it off to Josephus Housey down at RTT when I had him read it.
Yeah.
And as much as I love hearing that my thoughts are right, and my opinions are right, and that my theology is spot on, the biggest compliment I got was when he said, like you said, it's not polished, it's a conversation.
Right.
And the
Right.
statement he made was, when I read it, I could hear you.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what I want. One of the things I was in an interview today, and I was asked my thoughts on pastoral relations with the congregation and doing visitation.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stress this enough. If you do not have a relationship with someone, if you don't show them hospitality, you cannot speak into their life. Point blank.
Absolutely.
Good, right, or indifferent. Because as soon as you do, forgive the phrasing, you're not being a pastor, you're just being a dick. Because you're just speaking at someone. There's no heart in it because you haven't earned the right to speak at them.
Yeah.
Hence the reason I aim to be very raw and very transparent. And I have written about some hard things about myself because I want to be able to build a relationship with my readers so that way they know me. So that way, when they read something that, yes, may hurt their feelings, they know that I'm not saying it for clout, and I'm not saying it as clickbait. I'm saying it because it needs to be said.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I said from the very first piece, I actually took it to your mother and read it to her, and I said, "This boy has latched onto something." And growing up, it would have been said, "You found your niche. You found where you fit into the scheme of things."
Right.
And over the centuries of the church and church life, there have been men who have come along and who have said, some of them have been burned at the stake, some of them have been sawn in half, some of them have been slain on the altar of the temple, but they come and they speak. I would say this. I would say this. You have, and it's interesting because I look at your sister Robin, and she has very much similar the same gifts, and your brother Brian. You have a prophetic voice, and by that I don't mean that you tell the future. By that I mean you take the word of God and you apply it to your generation. What is God saying to this generation about this matter? In my mind, that is the prophetic voice. We've got some scallywags who want to go off into left field way too far, and they run around saying, prophesy to me, and they have no idea what that means. And if we remember in the scriptures, in the history of Israel, the prophets didn't show up when things were going well. Okay, the prophets didn't show up when Israel was walking in holiness. The prophets showed up when things were going awry, when things were getting bent, when things were not pleasing to God. All of a sudden, a Jeremiah or an Ezekiel or a Habakkuk showed up, and most of the time, the folks about them didn't like them very much. And you have a very strong prophetic voice for this generation.
Hey, and it's kind of a thank you because I know what kind of weight that is. I
look at my stooped over shoulders someday.
Yeah, no, I laugh. Some would look at it with shame. I wear it like a badge of honor. I have the proud honor of already having 3 different churches look at me and go, please stop coming here because I stood up for the gospel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I will wear that like a badge of honor till the day I die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I think hospitality is so important is, yes, the prophet showed up to, not in good times, and to let people know what needed to happen.
Correct.
The church never saw a prophet come and went, oh, yay, he's on his way.
Yeah, right.
I look at our generation, and you say a word for my generation. I look at my generation, and you have groups of people in droves that are looking to belong. They're looking to belong to the point that they're willing to mutilate their own body to find community.
Yep.
If the church would look up and be willing to be that community and welcome them in and give them in my training, I talk about Matthew 13, about how we're called to be salt and light, and where salt is used to heal, but it's also to help grow. If we would give them a safe place to heal from their wounds and to be able to grow in their Savior, we would live in a different time if we could just latch onto that. Because you have droves and droves of people that are turning to sex and drugs and politics purely to find their place. And yet, traditionally, the church has said, we want you here after you clean up.
Or after you become just like us.
After you become like us. Once you think exactly like us, I don't want to have to argue my point. So once you agree with us, please come over here.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. This is kind of a leading question. Define hospitality as a sense of what the church is missing. How do you define it? Because I know I've heard you say it. I've seen you write it. Hospitality is not pouring a cup of tea and making cookies.
No,
it's way more than that.
The church, society as a whole, has lost the fact that being hospitable is not showing hospitality. We forget that hospitality and hospital have the same root word. It is a place, an environment to grow and heal and rest.
Mm.
So often, when the church is able to get someone in, there's no rest, because if they are at a spiritual point, we put them to work. We put them to work instead of the Spirit doing it.
Mm. So let me interrupt you because you've just hit on something that I feel is very important, and I've preached it and I've taught it, and sometimes it falls on deaf ears. Sometimes we have become so much like an organization rather than an organism. When people walk through the door, we start evaluating them on the basis of what they can provide to the church more than what we can provide to them.
And I know you've heard me say this multiple times, it is one of my soapboxes. We value program over the people.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in what we have, we forget that the people are a program. And what it is if you are not someone that can help my program, you're standing in the way of it, and I'm not going to pay attention to you because I've got to get my service online by 10 o'clock, and we have to have our 3 hymns and our half an hour service, and then we have our Wednesday night that we have our small groups, but they're all just the small church cliques, and they all set up on this rotation for a semester, and if you don't catch on the first one, sorry, you're going to have to wait until the next one, and by then they're gone. Or if we do welcome someone in, we shake their hand and go to the next one because we are so caught up on greeting everyone, we don't actually show hospitality to anyone. Because it is a me focus.
Yeah.
I need to be seen greeting everyone, so I need to get through it as quickly as possible instead of making a proper connection.
So hospitality becomes more a program of the church than a lifestyle of its members.
There are churches in Brattleboro, there's plenty of churches in Georgia that have a hospitality ministry. Hospitality is not a ministry. Hospitality is how you do ministry. It's not a ministry. Norma, if you're watching, I love you. I love your baked goods. But that's not a hospitality ministry. Standing around drinking coffee with the guys that came in for Soup Kitchen, that was the hospitality ministry.
Right.
Not the cake and offering it. It's the conversation. We don't need the coffee. We don't need the cake. We need the connection. Right. And we have gotten so tied up in our lives that we lose that.
Yeah. Russell, you're checking out. God bless you. Pick up the rest of it on the replay. I know he's got to get up at dark 30 in the morning, so he's headed out.
Yep.
I think I think this is why the message of Salt, Light, and Hospitality is so very important, because it is in so many cases it's cookies. It's cookies, and we can say we had hospitality. And I know that in a lot of your blog posts, I read the one you just posted today, and in a lot of those posts that you make, you make the point that hospitality doesn't always look like we customarily think of hospitality looking like. What is the statement? Somebody says, when you use the words, "What would Jesus do?" Remember that whips and turning over tables might be a part of the equation. Uh, and being like Jesus, he was very hospitable, but he could also be very inhospitable to those who needed it, in defense of those who needed to be welcomed in.
So the way I would word that, and this is my favorite double-sided coin on it, Jesus showed hospitality to the sinner, and he showed it by being very caring and loving and welcoming them in and explaining to them with love about how what they were doing was wrong. He also showed hospitality to the sinner by looking at the Pharisees and saying, "You brood of vipers, you whitewashed coffins."
Yeah.
By telling them, "Look, you are doing harm." And it so often, hospitality and hospital have the same root word. The church needs to take on the mentality of do no harm. So often we end up doing harm by locking into our program. We do harm by locking into our opinion and not being willing to breathe, have a conversation, get to know someone. I mentioned in my post today, we do harm when we do hospitality while we dehumanize people. They're a ministry. Oh, he's one of our local bums that comes in for food. Oh, poor him. No, his name is Frank. He was a vet. He got kicked out because of mental health. He is a person. But when we classify them as they're our ministry or they're God's work, we're doing harm. Because when you treat a person in that realm, they'll never get out of that realm. They will never overcome what they're going through if you keep labeling them that. Show them a little hospitality and use their name.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with them.
But I watch your sister and her team do that every Thursday night in a very, 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 very real way. They know everybody's name. They know who's getting beat up by their boyfriend. They know who got arrested yesterday. They know all of that, and they are deeply, deeply involved in it. I don't think, of course, Robin and your mom, they work together on that. I don't think I've ever seen a ministry to the poor so impactful in changing lives.
Absolutely. And because they get it.
Well, and they also, they also start showing up on Sunday morning. And we have seen that a lot in the last 6 to 8 months. The number of people who, come in on Thursday night, and your mother.
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody gets an invitation to come to church. This is not the only thing going on. We have worship. You're welcome to come. And so everybody gets an invitation, and you will hear people say, "Well, I don't have clean clothes." And the answer to that is, so what?
John the Baptist wore camel skins.
Yeah,
Who
right.
cares? And it's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you invite people not to church, to your community.
Yeah.
We have humanized them. We treat them as humans, and we say, "Hey, we don't want you to come to church to know God. We want you to come to church because we want to be with you more because we care about you.
Yeah.
Not because something's wrong with you that God needs to fix. We want to invest time in you and we want to be with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is community, it's koinonia. It's that and I think of every time I walk into Branches, our family resource center, and behind the receptionist desk there's that new Branches logo we just did, and the quote on it is "We do life together."
As we should.
And so what we did, of course, Branches started out as an anti-abortion ministry, trying to save babies. But then, as the culture has evolved, so has the organization. We realize that it's not about saving babies; it's about saving families. It's about saving marriages. It's about saving lives, and that's what saves babies.
What good is saving a baby if you've lost mom and dad?
Yeah. Well, so we see. Oh gosh, we got a couple of guys. We got a couple of guys that are coming up to get baptized here in the next month or so. I am so excited about, because we've just watched the transformation as they have moved from looking in the door like this, wondering what's going on, to feeling welcome and coming in and sitting on the front row or sitting on the back row, and engaging in conversation with people and being engaged in conversation. It is such a thing. And I know that I heard someone say about some of the people that we see, that this fellow said, well, I don't really think we can deal with those kind of people in our church. And that breaks my heart, because Jesus dealt with you, doggone it.
You know
and
what? And people in high religiosity will look at me sideways for this, but I drive around our town and I see the churches in my community,
Mhm.
and I pray over them that they would either A, be the church, or that God would lock the doors to the building.
Mm.
Because if you're not being the church, you're just doing harm.
Yeah, I
Ultimately.
remember somewhere in the Old Testament prophets, maybe it's Malachi, I think, where God actually says about the temple, "I wish somebody would just lock the doors."
Yep.
He was so distressed about what was going on in his house that he said, "I just wish somebody would lock the doors." And of course, Jesus kind of had a house cleaning party one day in the temple, and you're right. Jesus dealt with sinners very gently. He
Yes.
dealt with their sin. He didn't ignore it. He didn't pretend that it didn't exist, but he dealt with the person. He dealt with the person, Andrew, before he dealt with the sin. And
It,
and I think that, it's the woman who was taken in adultery, and Jesus said, "I'm not here to condemn you." And then he said to her, "Go and don't engage in this lifestyle anymore. This is harmful for you."
one of my favorite examples of that was the woman at the well.
Yep.
He
One of my
called her
favorite
out,
stories.
but he did it in one line. He said, "Where's your husband?" And she went, "Oh, he's not here." And he said, "You're right. And neither of the other five you had.
Yeah, right, right,
But
right,
let's
right.
talk about your salvation." Never said another word
Yeah.
about her past, about her husband's. It was, "Yep, no, you're right. You don't have a husband right here,
hmm You know,
but you need a drink of water."
yeah, right.
Let's
Well,
fix that.
it's interesting. Over the years, I've had people get frustrated because I had a fellow say to me one time, "You have a double standard." And I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you have these folks who are coming to your church and they're clearly living in sin, and you have somebody else who's a member of your church and they're living in sin, and you chasten them and you don't do anything with these guys." And I say, "Oh, well, if that's what you mean by a double standard, you're absolutely right." These fellows over here have adopted a biblical standard. They have said, I want to follow Jesus. I want to walk in obedience to him. Well, I'm going to show hospitality to them and encourage them to do that and call them out when they don't. This
You know what?
fella, this fella doesn't need to marry the girl he's living with. He needs to find Jesus. And Jesus will take care of that.
You know what? It's funny when a young baby that we love and we cherish and we coddle, and then they mess their diaper. We go, oh, honey, and we bring them into the back room and we change their diaper and we clean them up.
Yeah.
And we love on them and we tickle them and we laugh about it. But when an adult does it, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
You know what?
Yeah.
Christians are the same way. When you were a child, yes, yeah, we will clean up this mess and we'll talk about it. And at some point, we will learn about how you shouldn't do that.
It's called potty training.
It's called potty training.
That's right.
But when you're an adult and you do it, no, here's a rag. Go get yourself clean. Don't do that again.
Yeah, yeah.
And somehow,
part of it, I think you're right. You see Jesus disciplining the mature ones and encouraging the infants and the children.
You see it with his disciples. When they first start following him and they don't quite get it or they make a dumb comment, he goes, hold on, let me explain it to you. But after they've been there for a while and he's heard them, and then James and John look at him and go, oh no, we can carry your same cup. You idiots, you don't even know what you're asking. Stop it. Quiet.
Yeah. Oh, ye of little faith.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Yeah, right. What's wrong with you? Have I been, or in John chapter 14, when Philip says, show us the way, and Jesus says, have I been with you this long?
Right.
And you still don't know who I am? You know, it's a very, very classic thing. And I think one of the things I'd like to come back to is that whole do no harm thing. Because I think, we see that on one side and we go to the other side where there are people who claim to follow Jesus and they're engaging in very, very harmful behavior, but we don't want to hurt their feelings. And so we won't say anything. We won't confront. We won't speak up. And that's, as you said, that's doing harm. Like if the doctor looks in my heart, I had heart surgery a couple of years ago. The doctor looks in my heart and sees something very serious there, but doesn't want to frighten me or hurt my feelings, so he doesn't say anything. Or the surgeon who says, you've got a large tumor growing in you, let me get my scalpel.
There are 1 million churches worth of congregations that are going to be loved straight to hell.
Yep.
Not to mention, in those congregations, and I apologize in advance for anyone's feelings who I hurt. Mm-hmm. In those congregations are sitting, living, breathing cancerous tumors that need to be cut out, point blank, because they are damaging the body.
Ouch.
And they need to be cut out and dealt with.
Yeah.
Because
I think if I could just take a little bit of issue, they need to be dealt with. And if they refuse to be dealt with, then they need to not be a part of that body.
When they are a small enough tumor, chemo may help.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are people that are standing in pulpits that may be beyond chemo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have a God of restoration, and that doesn't mean that they can't be healed and brought back.
Right.
But as far as the position that they are in or the place that they're in, sometimes you have to lob off a limb to be able to let it heal.
Well, there's the whole issue of 1 Corinthians, where there was a man in the church there who was sleeping with his stepmother. And Paul said, kick him out.
Yep, kick him
Don't
out.
put up with it. He's bringing disrepute on the body of Christ. He is, and if you let him get away with it, he will continue to do it.
And
so
others
he
will
said,
follow because cancer
and
spreads.
he will influence, like a cancerous tumor, he will influence others. And then in 2 Corinthians, you read Paul say, he's had enough. He wants back in. Welcome him back.
Right.
But don't withhold discipline because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Sometimes ministry hurts.
Yeah.
And I don't think people should fail to understand that often it hurts the one who's disciplining just as much as the one who's receiving the discipline.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's one thing why I encourage people, and yes, I would love it if you read my stuff, but do some study on it, because part of hospitality, yes, is welcoming the people in. Part of hospitality is disciplining people out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't negate the welcoming them in. And like you said, after they have been dealt with, if they have repented and they come back, by golly, like the prodigal son, welcome them back with open arms.
Run to them. I think that's the
and tell Peter too.
That's right. Absolutely. Peter would never have gone to Galilee to meet with Jesus if Jesus had not specifically said to Mary, make sure you tell Peter.
Right.
Yeah.
And so often we lose that. We say, oh, well, they needed to be cut out. And that's the end of it. I was talking to someone the other day that my name was mentioned in their church, and they were told to not bring my name up again. People,
you're a chip off the old block, let me tell you. Well, here's the thing. The prodigal son, I think this is a wonderful analogy. I've believed it my whole life. If you read that story, that's Luke chapter 15. If those of you who are in there don't know where it is, at no point in that story was he referred to as anything other than a son.
Right.
And at no point in that story was his father ever referred to as anything but his father. But his father did not send him a check every month, and he did not allow his mother to send him a box of cookies every month, because if he had, he would have stayed right where he was. Instead, the father said, you go ahead and sit in that pig slop just as long as you want to, but when you are ready to come home, come home.
And, I heard a wise man tell at one point, and I hear churches bring up the prodigal son all the time, and the piece of hospitality that they miss in it. Everyone wants a prodigal son to come home, but they don't have prodigal sons come home because no one wants to deal with the older brother that's standing there going, but why are you welcoming him back in? Why didn't you cut a cow for me?
My goodness, that's a whole other live stream right there. That's a whole other program. I think it was my friend Paul Jaley who told a story one time about he did a teaching on the prodigal son, and he named the two sons. He named the prodigal, the young one, grateful, and he named the older one, faithful. My God, faithful. And the older boy was faithful. He stayed there and he worked and he served his father and he built the farm, but he wasn't grateful. And grateful abandoned the whole thing, made an absolute mess of himself. But when he came back, he was grateful. And the moral of the story that Paul Jaley told was, what needs to happen in the church is that grateful needs to become faithful, and faithful needs to become grateful.
Right. People forget that when the prodigal son came back, he didn't ask for the coat. He didn't ask for the ring. He didn't ask for the cow. He came back asking to be a servant.
Right. Right.
And because he came back asking to be a servant, he got a coat and a cow and a ring.
Well, the reason he came back with that attitude was he came back with a repentant heart.
Right.
He came back with a repentant heart. He didn't come back with a proud heart. I love, one of the things I love about David. I mean, did David fall? Did David sin? He absolutely did.
Yep.
But when he was confronted with it, he didn't call it something else. And he didn't blame anybody else. He owned it and he repented of it. And so God welcomed him back into fellowship.
There is a reason why, even though David fell so many times, he was still referred to as a man after my own heart.
That's right. Because more than anything, David wanted God's heart.
That's why, as I wrote today, that's why he was able to stand over Saul with a spear to his throat and go, no, I'm going to offer you mercy. I'm going to offer you forgiveness. Because he was a man after God's own heart.
There was a wonderful book written many, many years ago that I love. As a matter of fact, I just recommended it to somebody the other day. It's called A Tale of Three Kings. And the Three Kings.
I've got it sitting in my shopping cart on Amazon.
Yeah, I told you need to read it.
Yeah.
It is the story of Saul, David, and Absalom. And when Absalom was on his tear and trying to wrest the kingdom from his father's hands, the commander of David's army says, let me go after him. He's trying to steal the throne, And David said to him, I don't remember, I don't think another phrase in that book, but I remember this one. I have lived by it so many years. David said, in my youth, I was not an Absalom. Shall I, my old age, become a Saul?
Yeah.
I have never forgotten that. And I remember, and this was David's position, what God has for you, you don't have to take. You don't have to take. God will provide it to you, okay? So if you are on the throne, you don't have to protect it. And if you're not on the throne, you don't have to go after it.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons why in this transitional period that I'm in, my prayer has solely been open the doors that are supposed to be open for me and burn down the rest. Because I don't want to chase after something that's not from you.
Well, that's great wisdom, son. I tell you that if more people would adopt that, one of the things that I have, hello, Daniel Allen from Florida. Good to see you. Oh, I'm still doing what I do, Dan. One of the things that I think is so powerful, I tell people all the time, Joseph had to go to Egypt.
Yep.
He didn't know that, and God didn't explain it to him. But in order to find his destiny, Joseph had to go to Egypt. Daniel had to go to Babylon. He had to. That's where his destiny was. Maybe Andrew had to go to Georgia.
Yep.
And just remember, it was that Georgia was where the devil went down to.
He went here for vacation, so that.
Yeah, right. No. So I think the wisdom here is, and I know, and I'll just let the cat out of the bag. You are looking to get into pastoral ministry.
And, that was my interview today.
I'm excited about that. I know you had an interview today, but and I've said to you, and you are taking that position. Don't try to take it. Don't force it. Don't get upset if a church doesn't want you. When you find the right place, you'll want to be there, and the people will want you there.
Yep.
And that's the only way to be in ministry. People say all the time, how have you managed to stay in the same place for 53 years? And my answer is always, how in the world have those people put up with me for 53 years? It goes both ways.
It was funny. I was joking the other day. I've made no qualm about it. I ran for ministry for years.
Yeah.
I'm willing. I have surrendered it over to God. When He gives me a pastoral position,
Mm-hmm.
I will be grateful. But I never wanted it in the first place, so I'm not going to complain about Him holding off a little bit so I get the right one.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and to be in the right place and to have the right group of people.
Yeah.
I say to people all the time, I'm not sure that any other church, certainly in the Northeast, would have tolerated me for where I've been at Agape, 45 years now, would have put up with me. I've had offers to go to other churches. I go and speak for a week or a couple of services, and they need a pastor, and they call me, would you come and be our pastor? And I will say, you know what? It's one thing to put up with a guy for a sermon or two, but if you're going to
Right.
live with him long term, that might not turn into be the honeymoon you think it would be. And I often say to guys, before you decide how much you like me, maybe you better talk to my wife. You know, because she will tell you that I'm not the easiest guy in the world to get along
Yeah.
with.
Talk to the
But
rest of the elder board first.
yeah, right. So I'm praying for you, and I'm praying that the right pulpit opens up and the right group of people that you can partner with. This ministry here for me in Brattleboro has been a partnership for
Yep.
many years, and there's nothing like it. It is a partnership where you have a bunch of people working toward the same goal, and that's what I covet for you. But in the meantime, we're a little over time, but it's my dime, so never mind. You are beginning to compile stuff for this book. I hope that sometime in this year we're going to get that thing into print because I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a real powerful piece of work. So you keep working.
I yeah, I
Yeah.
I still have quite a bit to go. I'm really hoping my goal is to get through the Old Testament so that way I can have the Old Testament be one book.
Mm-hmm.
I almost fear that is going to be in Old Testament part 1 and 2 because the more I dive in,
Well,
the more
what
I
I
get.
was thinking today was, I can't wait to see him get into those minor prophets.
You know
Because
what? The one I am most excited about to really dissect the hospitality in, and it's going to be fun, is Psalms and
oh,
Proverbs.
woo, yes, absolutely. You're going to see all sides of human personality in the Psalms, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I am deeply considering. Like I know we had talked
that
about.
that could be a book all by itself.
I really want to do the Old Testament. I'm in First Samuel now. I'm rounding the corner to Second Samuel. I may skip over Psalms and Proverbs for the moment
Mm,
and then dial back to it after I hit
yeah.
to the New
Or
Testament
maybe Psalms and Proverbs and even Song of Solomon.
because it's rich
Those are
stuff.
poetic, but they're poetic books, but there's rich theology there. There's rich
Right.
theology there. Yeah. I've just been kind of saying, I can't wait till he gets this first minor prophet out of because that's going to present a whole set of challenges there because those are some pretty odd guys. There's Karen Wright Hendricks from Biloxi, Mississippi in here, Karen. Good to see you. Daniel Allen, welcome. Barbara, Robin, Russell, Mandy Smith in here. Who else is in here?
I see Ma watching him there.
Huh?
Diane. Hi, Ma.
Is she? I didn't see her.
Yeah, she's liking it on Facebook.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Andrew, Michael Gantt, thank you very much for giving. I'm going to have you back because I think I've read a couple of your pieces, and I'd like to come back to one of them or two of them and make a whole program out of them because they're worth it.
Absolutely.
We might make this a regular thing if you're up to it. We might make a once a month thing and see what happens. But it's been good. It was good to see you over the weekend. It's good to see your face. I
Absolutely.
promise. Oh, you're in Gulfport, Karen. I thought you were in Biloxi, but next door neighbors.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. I'm going to say goodbye to Andrew. You stay right there for a minute, Andrew. I'll be back in just a
Will
second.
do.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my son, Andrew Michael Gantt, and he is living in the Savannah, Georgia area. He's working on a new book called Salt, Light, and Hospitality. If you want to be challenged, I want to recommend to you that you go to his website and read some of his blog posts. They are extraordinary. They are magnificent in their scope. I'm not just bragging on him because he's my son. I'm bragging on him because this is good stuff. And I believe the church is going to be powerfully, powerfully impacted by it. Hey, join me on Tuesday morning. Let me just remind you, join me on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. for my interview with my friend, Pastor Mark Fay from Vibrant Church. And then on the 31st of July, my friend Jean Marie Davis is going to be talking about her new movie, uh, her new movie, Breaking Shadows. I'm Mike Gantt. This is Live Mike. We're out of here.